Hi, my name's Alex and/or Raspberries 2006 from PB Nation, and this video is intended to be the yin to the yang of Nick Valeca's G6R tuning video. He did a great job talking about his understanding of the variables, and I'm going to kind of share my perspective, share how I go about tuning, and let's get into it. As I mentioned, this video is kind of a yin to the yang of Nick's video that he already made. And I'm going to assume you have watched that video first. So stop, go watch Nick's video. He's more articulate than I am anyway. He's cooler than I am. So go watch his and then watch this one because we're going to nerd out on this one. But let's talk limitations real fast. We're talking about my G6R, how it responds. Yours may be different. It may not apply to you. Variation in paintballs, bodies, poppets, all of that, which I believe he was talking about there being like 7 layers of variables in his video. So Nick was very much correct on that one. And before we really get anywhere into how I do tuning, the rammer O-ring is critical. You need to figure out the best size O-ring for your particular body, and it's very different compared to your production run, how many times you've been anodized, where. Um, Back in the day, G6Rs always ran Dow 55 to swell the O-ring, and this is probably why, is to just make this issue not be an issue. But here in the modern day, instead of using Dow 55, we usually just buy metric O-rings to size up to just make them run a little more consistently. Anyway, so for mine, doing my quick testing, I found that 1.8 by 7.5 millimeter was the best. 011 70 durometer being stock. So when you looked at Nick's video, Nick very much wanted to have the lowest LPR possible. He's chasing the perfect, softest, best typewriter shot on the G6R, and that's cool, and that's something I'd like to do. Uh, what I go for, though, is a little less than the perfection that Nick is going for because I need to show up on a tournament day or practice day with whatever paint that we're given, even if we're using leftover paint from another event, and I need to predictably be able to tune it up to 290 FPS and it shoot consistently. So with my particular ladders, I know that if I'm shooting in the 270s, that if I put in another 20 PSI and another 9 LPR PSI, that I will get a corresponding bump in FPS going from 270 to basically 283 or 282. So to kind of recap that, Nick tunes for the absolute best possible tune for the day for LPR. I'm tuning for something that's good and predictable. His tune is harder to get by the nature of trying to be the best possible. So Nick drew a picture, and I decided that I just wanted to kind of pull up the diagram to talk about tuning. Here is your LPR, here is your HPR. Something that I want to explain very much is your your LPR pressure pressurizes this chamber right here. This is all the air you're going to get that gets rerouted and directed to shoot your rammer forward. And I have that blown up here because when I talk to other people about why they're struggling with a certain rammer, any extra space you add here for bumpering on your rammer is going to increase the volume here, which decreases the amount of energy that you're going to get by you're spreading this little dump chamber through the manifold, through the hose, and back behind the rammer. And more space behind the rammer means less effective force pushing that thing. So in general, if you want the lowest LPR possible, you need to run a stock rammer or get really lucky with a Tech T rammer. But that's why there's other parts coming out. There's ways to kind of have your cake and eat it too. But I wanted to kind of touch over that looking at this parts diagram. But one other thing real fast, talking about the variables. You got your LPR setting, you got your HPR setting, you got your poppet face, that's a variable. You got your poppet weight, that's a variable. You got your rammer O-ring, that's a variable. And then you have your bolt flow, that's a variable. And then you have kind of the weights of this whole, it's a system weight. There's the pin, there's the bolt, and there's the rammer. And all of that weight counts for what comes forward and knocks open this poppet, because like Nick said, this chamber here is filled with air, and with this being a 0.441 diameter, it can get up to about 30 pounds of force pushing that way to keep a poppet closed. So you need to send force equals mass times acceleration. An object in motion stays in motion. An object at rest stays at rest. Unless an outside object acts upon it, you got to knock that poppet open in order to fire a paintball. Let's talk about how I tune. It is not the lurker method. It is very similar to what Nick said, ladder tuning, starting at 150 psi, and then I'll start at 50 LPR, go to 55, and what I'm looking for is I'm looking for when it first starts to work. I'm looking for when I don't get any more, no more FPS, and then I'm also looking for when it starts to jackhammer. This is what I call my cold, my gold, and my hot. And generally, I never use a hot tune because you're just smacking the rammer into the front body of the gun. But this gives you a tuning curve in order to understand and predict where your pressures need to be set. So let's go through this. All right, this is my actual tuning sheet. This is like a year and a half old that I found from my bastard ripper when I first put it together and I was tuning this thing. All right, but the very first one that I tried is 150 at 50, so 50 LPR, and I got 200-ish FPS. That's not working. That's not good enough. All right, but when I went to 55 LPR, I got up to 240 feet per second, which isn't, that's not great, but that is what I would call starting to works, and I recorded that in my sheet. And then 60 LPR, still 240, no difference. 65 got me up to 255, and then doing it just right, kind of hitting this little sweet spot node here, 150 over 70 got me 270-ish FPS. This is I wrote an arrow here. This was my golden ratio here. This is optimum. The poppet's fully opening. It's consistent. This was my best tune at 150. And I didn't really get a lot of clacking, but I noticed that it kind of stopped it went down at 75, and I knew that I wasn't going to get any more going from there. So I stopped there. And then I I upped my HPR to 185, and at I started at 70 because I figured there's no point if you're going higher on your HPR, there's no point in going even lower on your LPR, because if you're struggling at 65 LPR at 150, the struggle is going to be harder at 185. There's just more force there. So starting at 70, there's 260 FPS, not bad. And then at 75, there's 270. 80, there's 275. And then at 85, I had 275 again, but it was loud. All right, so this is where my red tune started kicking in. 185 over 85 was kind of loud, and then 185 over 90 gave me a hiss. So the poppet wasn't returning right, or I was smacking it so hard that it was kind of kinking the poppet spring. And then over at 205, 65, notice 205 over 65, 240 is worse than 185 over 70. That is that not fully opening the poppet dump chamber and just being ineffective at launching a paintball. 205 over 70 got 267 is what I wrote at the time. 205 over 75 got 280. 205 over 80 got 275 is what I wrote there. So these two are kind of oscillating between the two. 85 got 275. And then finally, 205 over 90, I got up in the 290s, 290-ish, 95, 290, 100, 295, right? So my golden ratio here hit to be about 90, and my cold ratio was 205 over 75 is probably what I wrote in my sheet. And we'll be taking a look at that here in a second. So this is my cold tuning, and I plug in my ideal tune here, and it automatically adjusts what these numbers are. So as I said, that 205, after doing my ratios and kind of averaging across, it came out to be 205 over 76. So 76 is the lowest I could honestly expect it to work consistently at 205. And I know that if I show up to the field and let's say I'm playing Minneapolis indoor and I need to shoot 250 feet per second, or well, honestly, they say 250, but you can shoot about 260. They won't yell at you. I know that if I'm shooting 290 at 205, I probably need to go to 170 over 63 to preserve that tune and turn it down, and to not sit at the chrono all day and not be able to play. So very effective. I've been using this for a year. It's worked for tournaments. It gives you a level of predictability for your tunes to get out there, have good lanes, and play. With, like I said, this being the cold tune, and and the gold tune being my always work, always consistent tune. I wanted to show this graphically, these tuning curves, as this is my cold, my gold, and my hot. Nick tries to kind of skirt this perfect line here, right? Anything to the left of this curve, his gun's not going to be working and it's going to struggle. And you know, he said he wants to have the smoothest possible, whereas I'm looking for something in this zone here. And you know, an ego, like an ego 11, ego 9, they ride this hot curve, right? They're always working, but they're loud cannons. I'm trying to have something in the strike zone here where I'm consistent but not smacking the rammer around, and I am smooth but not drooping like first shot drop off. And it really is the strike zone here. And I just wanted to show like this little square here. Like the manuals say start at 185 over 80, but that is one point in a continuum of a curve of that 185 could be working great if your LPR is at 80, but if you do 185 and your LPR is here, so if you do 185 but your LPR is 60 because you don't get this adjustment right, your gun's not going to work. Or, well, at least not on my bastard ripper. So like you have to follow the curve and have a predictable way to tune your marker. And let's talk about for a second why the lurker method is fucking terrible. All right. I hate the lurker method. I think it's a great way to blow a solenoid. Anybody who's good at the lurker method has used pressure testers so long that they have this clocking system memorized and they know what they're doing. If you are new and you want to try to use the lurker method, don't, because you are going to blow your shit up. All right, and this is why. You can test this on your own G6R. Set your LPR pressure to 0 and start turning in your LPR. This is looking at the LPR like with the barrel pointed at your face. If you look at the LPR and you get it to just start showing some pressure on the gauge, it's going to go to about 20 or so. Now put your Allen wrench right at 12 o'clock and then rotate all the way around. Once you get to about 7:30, 8 o'clock, you're going to be at 60 psi. So your entire tuning curve is a little over a quarter of a turn, maybe a third of a turn for a little screw in the front of your LPR. You're really going to get that right and not exceed 100 psi, which is a little bit is about a tenth of a turn past noon, 12 o'clock. No way. You're gonna be twisting on your HPR, and then you're gonna move your tool up to your LPR, and you're gonna twist, and you're gonna go up and down, and you're gonna forget where you're going, and you're gonna supercharge your gun, and you're gonna blow shit up. The lurker tuning method it may have worked back then when paint was rounder and you could use less pressure. You didn't need as much LPR, but not anymore. And I think that's why they were selling so many pressure testers even back in the day. I think they knew you needed a pressure tester to honestly do this with any sort of precision. So fuck lurker tuning. Anyway, we took a look earlier at the tuning curves, and in a prior video we also talked about how adding a little bit of weight, getting from 27 grams to 30 grams, got us about 5 LPR equivalent PSI to get higher FPS. So let's take a look at this video that I did playing with those tuning curves to kind of show you that better. Playing with my tuning calculator, let's say that I get the copper parts for the G6R that Nick and I are working on. And instead of my ideal cold tune being 175 over 65, based on prior testing with the heavier parts and getting back up to OG weight, I can get this to be 60. Watch how this changes all of these tunes down the stack. All of a sudden, the entire tuning curve becomes more optimum. So let's take that for a second. Let's take all those numbers, Control C, and I'm going to take this into mini tab. Oh, looks like I already did that in mini tab. Whoops. So numbers are in. I'm going to call this cold copper. And then let's go to my gold setting and let's put in the same 5 FPS less because we're going to assume that if, sorry, 5 LPR PSI less. If I can make the whole system work consistently at 5 less LPR by having a heavier bolt, then it should be my ideal tune. My gold tune should also go down by 5 LPR. So instead of 80.42, we're going to put in, well, first we're going to click this enable editing button. We're going to put in 75 and watch all these change. Boom. So grab this, go back to mini tab, put that in, gold, copper. And then scatter plot, connect with groups, press OK. So let's take a look here. This was my old tuning line for cold. This is my old tuning line for gold. Now notice everything I'm doing here has now shifted to having less LPR needed. Now to shoot 300 FPS, it's kind of hard for the G6R because all the volumes are so dialed in. But having a heavier bolt gives you more LPR runway corresponding to your LPR HPR goes up, LPR has to go up. If you have a heavier bolt, you have more runway to use to get up to those higher FPSs for your tournament play where you want to overbore and you want to use your carbon nano barrel that doesn't work very well for a poppet. You have more margin by having your entire curve shift to the left a little bit than you would by running just a lighter bolt because the method system is just so much lighter. A big thing to consider is that there truly is no truly new ideas under the sun. Everything we stand on the shoulders of giants to make newer systems better. And there was a lot of good that came from the method bolt system. The modular uh, pull pins that don't have a ball that can get lost, the modular tips, being able to choose between the F1 tip and the die tip, and you can consistently replace those. It's not the lost pillows like the lost technology, not able to replace any more pillows that we used to have, because Field One is still making forces. But this fang and this die tip, it comes in about 3 grams light, and that lightweight, it's about a 10% reduction, and for the entire system, it's about a 5% reduction compared if you do the pin and the rammer. And we have seen over kind of paintball history, every LV 1.6 and LV2 comes with a light rammer and a heavy rammer because they know that some people want to shoot efficient and some people want to shoot smooth. Everyone runs the heavy rammer. For the Insight, they have this brass rammer that's supposed to slow everything down. For the Ego 11, I was told by Ego 11 users that an Ego 11 without a dart kit was a cannon, and this allowed them to get their LPR tuned into something reasonable. And if you look at a NETEC 5, they basically come with the dart kit stock, like it no longer became an upgrade. And then the whole VIS engine for the VCOM and the Ripper and the T-Rex and all that, the VIS engine over the SE engine is essentially a heavy rammer. And the lurker eigenram with this brass insert, are you noticing a pattern here? So getting these copper parts that are 3.3 times the weight of the corresponding aluminum parts that we already have for the method bolt, it's really common sense that it's going to give us a benefit, at least somewhat, getting this back to OG weight. It worked before, it's going to work again. I can't wait to get these because it's going to make my life easier when I'm trying to play with basically the equivalent of a third gen Corvette in modern 2026 tournaments for paintball. Love my G6R. The thing's light and sexy as can be, and this copper kit is going to help make it last another decade. So thank you for watching, and I hope you get on the list because there's only going to be 50, and we got about a week left, and then that's it.